happens if I get medically retired? Hey, I am Chuck the bureaucrat, and some of you have asked me to describe the process of retirement or separation if you have some sort of physical disability. This kind of a separation is often referred to as a Chapter 61 retirement, and that is because it originates in Title 10 of U.S. Code, Chapter 61. And as you can imagine, military medical retirement is, well, it's a complicated process. There are lots of steps, there are lots of people who have a say in how those decisions are made. But for today, I just want to focus on the first part of Chapter 61 that lays out who, under what conditions, is entitled to what kind of treatment. It may not sound like much, but I think that I've boiled down pages and pages of legalese into a single, simple graphic that's going to get us headed in the right direction. Now, just so I don't waste your time, there are a couple of details that I'm not going to cover in this video. Those include the kinds of injuries and illnesses that get you into this process in the first place, the process itself and all those steps and different people you have to deal with, and the calculation of benefits and entitlements associated with medical retirement and separation. If that's interesting to you, please leave a comment and we'll do future videos on them. But if you want to read ahead, there's two good sources in addition to Chapter 61 itself. That is DODI 1332-18, the Disability Evaluation System, and AR 635-40, Disability Evaluation for Retention, Retirement, and Separation. Today, we're going to focus on the first 8 sections of Chapter 61 because this sets the stage for how an individual is handled in the process. And rather than read all of the legalese to you, which is tedious, I'm going to show you a simple flowchart that walks us through these sections. And then, when it's all said and done, I'll show you which logic paths correspond to which sections. It'll be easy, you'll see. All right, to kick things off, was the injury or illness that makes a service member unfit for their office grade, rank, or rating, was the injury the result of intentional misconduct or willful neglect? If the answer is yes, the service member is not going to be covered by Chapter 61. He will, as my grandmother used to say, be SOL. And I just want to pause here and point something out to you. Remember that time you and your buddies went to the beach and you got so sunburned that you could barely put your uniforms on? And your first sergeant just kept going on and on about how you were damaging government property? I think that in his own strange way, your first sergeant was protecting you against this clause about willful negligence. If you harm yourself, either intentionally or through willful neglect, you lose benefits. And it's just kind of a complicated idea for some old first sergeant to try to explain to some young buck. So that whole government property logic it makes a lot more sense when it has to be screamed at somebody at 4:30 a.m. Anyways, assuming your injury is not your fault, the next question is, are you either a regular forces service member or are you a reserve component person who's been on active duty for 30 days or more? This question really only puts one small kink in the whole logic tree, but trust me, the way that Chapter 61 is written, it makes it incredibly messy. See, if the answer is yes, we're just going to go on with the rest of the checklist. But if the answer is no, we have to take a short detour. See, if you are a reserve component service member on active duty for 30 days or less, the question that's going to come up is, was the injury or illness in question sustained while in the line of duty? There are lots of rules about how that gets determined, but for now, the important thing is that if the injury or illness was not in the line of duty, Chapter 61 doesn't apply. And if it was in the line of duty, then you just follow the same logic flow as a regular Army guy. Now, before we go on, there is one important rule about reserve component folks that you may have seen in action but not really understood what was going on. This is in section 2106A of Title 10. Not subsection A, but section 1206A. This says that if a reserve component member is ordered to active duty for more than 30 days, I don't know, say they have orders for a 12-month deployment, but they fail to meet the physical standards for retention for some non-line of duty issue, then they can be released from active duty before the 30-day mark and be treated as if their orders were for less than 30 days. It's one of the reasons that medical readiness is a big deal with the reserves. Okay, the next question boils down to, does the service member have either 20 years or more of service, or do they have a disability of 30% or greater? If neither of those factors are true, then Chapter 61 sets them up for separation, either under Section 1203 for the regular Army guys, or 1206 for the reserve component guys with less than 30 days. If the service member meets one or both of those criteria, then the question becomes, is their condition permanent and stable? If it is not permanent and stable, they can be placed on the temporary disabled retiree list using sections 1202 or 1205. And if it is permanent and stable, they can be medically retired under Chapter 61. Now, like I said at the beginning, this just gets us started on the long and winding journey that is the medical retirement and separation for a physical disability. But hopefully this can help you cut through the noise and focus on where you stand in terms of outcomes based on your status. And then there's the question of what to address next. I don't really know. I'm going to leave it to you guys and the comments that you make to shape what we talk about next. But in the meantime, watch this video on presumptive conditions to understand how they can help make your VA claim process a lot more straightforward.